President Metsola and EP Rapporteurs Mrs. Mr. Mureşanom and Mrs. Tavares are present with us today. President, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Delphine. Good afternoon to you all. Let me start by thanking Siegfriedom Mureşanom and Carlo Tavares, our rapporteurs, for their outstanding work. Last Friday at the informal European Council in Cyprus, I presented Parliament's priorities to EU leaders, and today with this vote the European Parliament has formally adopted its position on the next long-term budget. I just have three quick and brief messages. First of all, what today's vote means. The fact that the European Parliament is ready. And we are actually ahead of the curve by being the first institution to define its priorities and position on the MFF and having attributed work to the respective committees in record time, and we now hope that the Council will follow suit quickly so that negotiations can start without delay. Second message, from speed to substance. Europe cannot face a new era with a long budget. Europe faces new realities, new crises, and new responsibilities, from defense and security to competitiveness and resilience. If we want our union to stand on our own 2 feet, our budget must match our ambition. And here, we cannot ask the next generation to foot yesterday's bills. And that is why Parliament is calling for real progress on own resources. We need fresh money to service old debt and to repay next generation EU without cutting into the priorities of the future. Third message is on flexibility. Whether it is war, migration, or natural disasters, Europe needs the ability to react fast. Take the current solidarity and emergency aid reserve, which we find regularly running dry, forcing us to keep plugging the gap by voting on amending budgets. So frankly, these disasters, and I give examples like floods and fires, cannot wait for budget revisions. So our budget must be crisis-proof, it must be agile, and it must be ready to respond. And Parliament's consent will depend on that, and we are ready to deliver a budget in this regard.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us for this press conference. Indeed, the plenary of the European Parliament has just adopted the mandate, the official position of the European Parliament, and the mandate for the upcoming negotiations with the Council and Commission on the budget of the European Union for the next 7 years. The plenary of the European Parliament has adopted this mandate with an absolute majority of all members, 370 members of the European Parliament voting in favour, 201 voting against, and 84 abstaining. This is more than 50 members of the Parliament supporting the Parliament's work, more than 50 members in addition to what we had for the first positioning of the Parliament on the next MFF 1 year ago. It is an absolute majority of all members. It is a strong position, and we saw all pro-European groups, the whole centre of the House, united behind this position. We are here with proposing a budget which is sufficient, which is predictable, and which is transparent. We are supporting security defense on the one side and competitiveness on the other side as the new priorities of the European Union. If we think this is important, then it has to be funded properly, and we propose more resources for security, for defense, and for competitiveness in comparison to the past budgets. But of course, we also continue to support the traditional priorities of the European Union, agriculture and regional policy. With the position of the Parliament from today, we are restoring the unjustified cuts made by the European Commission to agriculture and to cohesion policy in its proposal 1 year ago. We promised to farmers and officials that we are going to continue supporting them. Food security is essential in these times of international security risks. There cannot be any national security without food security. And we also want a budget which is implemented as close as possible to the citizens. This is why we want a compulsory role of regions. We want decisions to be made as close as possible to the citizens, and this is why we want a compulsory binding role for the regions within the cohesion policy. We want that the common agricultural policy and cohesion policy continue to be distinct policies with a clear legal base, with a clear separate budget, and this is exactly what we are doing with today's parliamentary position. We give predictability to beneficiaries of EU funds. We want to set targets for the next 7 years, then to allocate resources so that we can meet the targets. We want this budget to be a budget for investments. We reject the idea that a budget should be adopted and then we will see later how we allocate resources. That type of uncertainty is bad for beneficiaries of EU funds. The EU budget is not a crisis response mechanism. It should be a predictable investment tool, and within each of these policies, as the President has said, we are designing flexibility so that member states can react to different developments that will occur over the next 7 years. We propose a budget at 127% of the GNI of member states, with the repayment of next generation EU debt to be made outside the budget, above and beyond the ceilings of the budget. This has always been the long-standing position of the Parliament. We believe that the repayment of debt should not become a burden for the budget. We should not have less resources for researchers, for SMEs, for Erasmus students, for innovation, for farmers, because we have to pay back debt. This is why we propose to allocate the whole budget put forward by the Commission for programs and pay back the next generation EU debt with all resources above and beyond the ceilings. This allows us to allocate 10% more for beneficiaries for those areas which we consider are important. On the creation of own resources, we want the budget to be sufficient. We understand that member states cannot contribute because of fiscal constraints much more into the EU budget. We believe that cuts will be wrong, and this is why the introduction of own resources is the only way to ensure an ambitious budget without cuts, without increasing the contributions of member states and also repaying our debt. The European Parliament is ready to contribute with new ideas about in the own resources debate, and the most notable idea that the European Parliament puts forward is a digital levy. We are of the very strong opinion that if global technological giants enjoy access to the European single market, they should also contribute to the EU budget for this. We would not want to be in a position where global technological giants enjoy free access to the single market and in parallel we cut funding to farmers, to SMEs, to students, to researchers. So a realistic budget. As of today, the Parliament has a position and we are ready, as the President said, to engage quickly in upcoming discussions with the Council and Commission. The ball is now in the court of the Council.
Thank you so much. Thank you for joining us. I'm speaking Portuguese. As the President Siegfried said, today it was a very important. Hoje foi, sem sombra de dúvida, dia muito importante para o Parlamento. O Parlamento conseguiu a aprovação do mandato para negociar o próximo quadro financeiro com uma maioria muito confortável, e isso permite-nos estar em condições definidas que são as nossas prioridades e que temos partilhado em diversos momentos com a comunicação social e que o Siegfried também já enunciou, de partirmos para este processo com todas as condições para defender aquilo que é a posição do Parlamento e aquilo que foram desde o início, aliás, desde o primeiro relatório de iniciativa em maio de 2025, aquelas que consideramos ser as prioridades do Parlamento e o trabalho que foi feito também a partir do momento que foi conhecida a proposta da Comissão. O processo e a metodologia que fomos utilizando para trabalhar este dossiê é de todos conhecidas, já tivemos a oportunidade de o partilhar. Há, no entanto, uma questão que o Siegfried referiu e que gostaria de voltar a reforçar e que se prende com os recursos próprios. Nós sabemos que temos que ter mais ambição, mas não podemos, de facto, fazer mais com menos. Não podemos sacrificar as políticas tradicionais da União e aquilo que é o seu ADN nas áreas da coesão, da agricultura, das regiões ultraperiféricas, do Fundo Social Europeu, novos desafios como as áreas da habitação, mas ao mesmo tempo temos necessidade de ter mais investimento, de melhor nos prepararmos para aquilo que são os desafios presentes e futuros, como é, por exemplo, as áreas da competitividade, da segurança e da defesa. E não há mais ambição, é difícil haver mais ambição sem mais recursos próprios. E os recursos próprios temos 3 caminhos para conseguir chegar a esse desígnio. Ou aumentar a contribuição dos Estados-membros, que não nos parece de todo um caminho possível de ter consenso, reduzir significativamente o investimento nos programas europeus para o próximo quadro financeiro, o que também não nos parece todo um caminho. Sobra uma terceira via, que é de facto trabalhar na área dos recursos próprios. E esta é uma oportunidade também para o Conselho o fazer, e o Parlamento é muito claro nesta sua posição, dando inclusive caminhos para que possamos naturalmente trabalhar. Porque se não tivermos mais recursos próprios, estaremos seguramente daqui a uns meses, aqui numa mesma conferência de imprensa, a partilhar a diminuição em programas que são essenciais para a União Europeia. A partir de hoje, o Parlamento, que deu hoje um sinal de maturidade democrática e política, valorizando aquilo que nos aproxima e centrando-nos em torno daquilo que são os grandes desafios da União Europeia, está em total condição de começar a trabalhar. Tem as diversas caixas financeiras definidas, tem as suas prioridades definidas sob o ponto de vista horizontal nos diversos programas e, portanto, o que aguardamos é que tão rapidamente quanto possível o Conselho e a Comissão estejam em condições de ter a mesma posição firme, determinada, em nome dos interesses da União Europeia e, em particular, dos cidadãos que todos nós representamos. Muito obrigada.
Thank you. We now have the time for a few questions. If you give the floor, can you state your name, your media, and who you are addressing the question to? We start with Polen.
Yes. Well, Danish National Radio Journalism, you just said the ball is in the court of the council. There's a keen football supporter. There's nothing worse than watching a game where one team has the ball but it keeps playing around among each others and nothing happens in the game. And well, you made a goal with your adoption today, but if you, I was in Cyprus, listen to the council, there's a lot of disagreement on everything from own resources to the size of the budget and the way forward. So I basically have 2 questions. Is there anything the Parliament can do to force the council to speak up, or are you just sitting back and waiting? And if that is the case, there's nothing we can do, and it looks like the council is in some kind of a quagmire. What will be the consequence of this dragging on later and later in the council?
So very quickly, and then I'll defer to my colleagues. We can always have a debate of who is first, who's second, who's doing what at what time. What we can tell you is that we've done what we need to do. And we've done it 8 months before the projected date of these conclusions hopefully being concluded. There is, I would say, an understanding that this timeline should be kept, at least for the President of the European Council on discussions, and this was also on the table in Cyprus. I think it's no surprise that you have varying and very divergent views of member states. This is not the first time that MFF was being discussed, but it's also against the background, and I will conclude with this, of unprecedented challenges. We always say this is the hardest MFF we've ever had to negotiate. I think we'll be correct in saying that this is the hardest MFF that needs to be negotiated. But if, and we can discuss amounts, and colleagues can go into detail, but if you are going to say, if something is going to be touched with Horizon, Erasmus, agriculture, fisheries, citizens look to the Parliament to defend those fundamental European programs that give them the sense of being in the European Union. And that is why we defend them, and we have arguments for doing exactly what we voted on today.
Yeah, indeed, if some 121 members of the European Parliament can agree on a common position, that 27 members of the European Council shall do so as well. Basically, we will have a new budget as of the 1st of January 2028, with also new priorities, particularly in the area of security and defense, much more resources than we had in the current budget. We need those resources to be implemented fast, to produce results fast, for citizens in Europe to feel safer as a result of those those investments. And in order for the budget to produce results as of 1st of January 2028, we need a European agreement by the end of this year, so that next year beneficiaries at national and regional level, plus private beneficiaries, can prepare the absorption of EU funds. Otherwise, there will be delays in the implementation of the budget at the beginning of 2028, particularly in the area of security defense, those will be felt, and we should avoid this. Now, what can the Council do? This is why our clear call to the Council is to do what the Parliament also did, adopt a common position and common negotiations with the Parliament. What can the Council do now? Firstly, agree on a common position as soon as possible, and secondly, incorporate the core elements of Parliament's position into their reading as well, so that the final negotiations between the Council and the Parliament can take place in a constructive environment. An absolute majority of members of Parliament has spoken clearly today on what their expectations are. The more these are already included into the Council's position, the easier the final negotiations will be.
Thank you. We'll take the question. Vincenzo first.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much. Vincenzo Genovese from Vilnius. I have a question for the co-rapporteurs. I would like to ask if there have been significant changes from the report that was approved in the committee. And to the President Metsola, a quite simple question, but maybe the answer is not. The Parliament wants an increase of around 10% compared to the Commission proposal, which was already too ambitious for the Member States or for some Member States. How do you hope to persuade EU countries more money? Thank you very much. She wants to think about it.
Thank you so much for your questions about acerca das propostas que foram apresentadas pelos diversos comitês e como já tivemos a oportunidade de clarificar em outros momentos. E no aumento do tamanho que propomos relativamente ao próximo quadro financeiro, procuramos também reduzir estes 10% em todas as rubricas do heading 1, 2 e 3 e levar em linha de conta nas áreas essenciais aquilo que também eram as propostas dos comitês. Em alguns casos foi mais fácil do que noutras, mas o resultado final terá sido por ser positivo, atendendo ao resultado da votação que tivemos hoje também em plenário.
I can answer. If we start by saying that the MFF is not just a financial tool, but a genuine political roadmap of what the priorities of the European Union are today, against the backdrop of all the challenges, not only that we are facing today, but that we have faced if we look at the current financial framework, both in terms of the recognition, stark recognition of the fact that it was not fit for the crisis we have lived through, both because of the pandemic and also because of Russia's invasion of Ukraine, and that on top of annual catastrophes that we find ourselves, member states desperately looking to the European Union for support at the most difficult and challenging times on the national level. So we start with that as a point of departure. If we are serious about strengthening our competitiveness, our defense, our security, our strategic autonomy, then we have to have the capacity to deliver. And if, and this was what Carla said a little bit earlier, member states want to lower their contributions, which is a discussion also that we hear from a lot of them, we finally need to make progress on own resources. And this is also based on what has been done in the Commission, and also the discussion that has taken place by our co-rapporteurs that has garnered such a big majority in this Parliament. I think in the end, we all have the same priorities. What we want to do is to deliver results for European citizens, which needs to include, in the case of amounts, a serious discussion on resources.
Thank you. We'll take a question in the first row.
Thank you, Mr. Bakker, for Dutch newspaper Telegraaf. For the President, in June you will meet our Prime Minister yet again. And as you know, the Netherlands is one of the biggest net contributors to the EU budget. And I just want to know, because in the Netherlands it means if you want to spend more, also for a higher contribution, it means something. So I want to know, do you have any suggestions for tax raises or budget cuts in the Netherlands? Thank you.
Thanks for this. So I've actually had the opportunity, and I must say it has been a great privilege to get to know Roberto since he's also become Prime Minister of the Netherlands with a government that has a very clear plan as to what path that country should take. Again, in these difficult times that every member state is facing. I have been standing next to Prime Ministers who are asked similar questions in different countries, and those Prime Ministers saying, actually, we used to be frugal and now we're not so much anymore. So I think that this discussion is a reflection that needs to be taken by each head of government and state around the table. As to one, what are the challenges we have? Two, how can we face them against the backdrop of so many challenges and such crises that could occur at any time? And how to use the responsibility that we are given by our citizens to deliver on them. So this is, as Siegfried mentioned earlier, this is a negotiation, but at least what Roberto can be reassured of is that our position is clear, and that his members that represent his country also across this House wants to have a delivery for the citizens in the Netherlands and voted for.
Maybe just some additional elements that might be helpful for the public debate in the Netherlands and other net contributing member states. If we all agree that Europe should do more to strengthen our economy, to be ready for the digital age, to protect citizens, to security, energy security, protecting borders, and so on, it's clear that we cannot do more with less. So pretending that we can do more with less is just a myth. It would not work in practice. Carla and myself have demands from all sectoral committees in the Parliament to increase allocations to all programs, but of course we are aware of the limits of the EU budget. This is why what we are proposing is firstly a very moderate, realistic increase of 10%, justified and focused on the areas where the Commission made unjustified cuts, like agriculture and cohesion, or on areas like military mobility, research, innovation, which are needed and which are future-oriented. First. Second, we propose to allocate the 10% increase evenly across the three headings of the budget. Herewith, we are supporting the new structure of the budget as put forward by the Commission. So, much more for security, defense, competitiveness, and this we believe is an important element in the public debate in the Netherlands. Then we have a very strong rule of law conditionality. Whoever receives European funds should respect European values. And then, fourthly, a link to reforms. So we have to design it properly in all details in the specific procedures, but we believe that in parallel with investments, reforms should also play a role, and we know this is an important element in the public debate in the Netherlands, and there is full understanding for that.
Thank you. We had a question from Senegal.
My name is Guillermo for Politico. The question for the rapporteurs and for the President. For the rapporteurs, Mr. Wilson, we're hearing that the Council incorporating Parliament's position, and since the Council doesn't like Parliament's position, they want to lower budget, it remains to be seen to what extent they incorporate. And the only time that we can actually say the Council is to do that. So my question is simple: are you ready to bring down the whole budget if the Council doesn't think that you have your position? So the question for the rapporteurs. And the other one is which member states will be reaching out to try to incorporate Parliament's position. And then for Madam President, I remember for the Omnibus, the first one, after a press conference in the European Council, you said that you would come back to the Parliament and make sure the Parliament will deliver. Now my question to you is, what is your message to member states in Parliament, this fragmented Parliament, under this can go on in a lot of ways? What message will you give to leaders regarding the Parliament's position? Thank you.
Our key plan as a Parliament is to vote in favour of the budget in the end, but obviously the majority of members can only vote in favour if our demands are incorporated into the budget to a satisfactory extent. This Parliament is much more volatile and predictable than the Parliaments in the past. The European Council just agreeing on the Council position and then telling us this is the budget, there is no other budget, just rubber stamp it, by the way, hurry up. That will not work in practice. We have been very clear as a Parliament since the beginning of the process. that we intend to play a key role throughout the negotiations of the budget, both in the MFF as a whole and in the sectorial files, from the beginning to the end. We will reach out to the Commission, we will reach out to all member states, not differentiating between north and south, east and west, large and small. As of today, the Parliament has demanded and we're open for dialogue with everyone with a clear objective of an agreement as soon as possible.
Thank you for the question and for following up on what we've sort of been seeing over the past months. There is a big difference between delivering and being a rubber stamp. So the European Parliament has never been and will never be a rubber stamp. I think the process with which Siegfried and Carla moved through the committee stage with all the sectoral opinions coming in give you an idea about how majorities are built in this House. They're built with clear understanding of what citizens want and how they can deliver. And that is what I will take to the next European Council, as I did last week after the committee vote, before today's vote in Cyprus, where I said, this is what we hope to see from the European Parliament, but we are going to take the decision next week. We will be ready. It's April, many months, 8 months before the end of this year, when the new budget should kick in, and this is what we need to be ready for. And I think that is what is understood increasingly by the other institutions, both when proposals are put forward and when proposals are negotiated, proposed by the Commission and negotiated with the House.
Thank you. We'll take the last question. There's a question totally at the back. Can you stand up and address the speaker, please?
Hello, good afternoon. My name is Kuba Mahaj. I'm from the Polish Press Agency. I'm having two questions actually. So first, I know it's quite unclever or weak to reveal the strategy of negotiations before the negotiations are taking place. But I know it's your final proposal, but is there anything you can give up during the future negotiations? And the second thing, I believe this information will make all of us really happy, because Andrzej Poczobut, the brave journalist and the hero of the freedom of the speech, is a free person now. He left the Belarusian prison, and may I ask you, Madam, for your comment, because I think he's a very important person also from the perspective of the European Parliament. Thank you.
I'll just speak on the second part. Absolutely. We have seen the tweet by the Polish Prime Minister, Donald Tusk, welcoming the release finally after years of this Parliament having demanded it of Andrzej Poczobut. He is a hero, a European that has fought for democracy and the values that we all share. He's also a Sakharov Prize winner of this House. So the relief and the joy, I would say, that we have received the news with is immense. On negotiation tactics, just one thing, never underestimate the Parliament.
Thank you, Presidente. E é isto mesmo. Nós partimos, o Parlamento parte para este processo negocial com um mandato muito forte e muito claro daquilo que é o papel que vamos ter nas mesas das negociações. E, portanto, não estamos ao dia de hoje a pensar desistir do que quer que seja. Foram muitos meses de trabalho conjunto dentro deste Parlamento, num contexto político do Parlamento que todos sabemos que não é o mesmo que tínhamos quando se trabalhou neste atual quadro financeiro que está vigente. E, portanto, neste momento, para o Parlamento, o mandato é claro, inquire relativamente àquilo que são as áreas prioritárias e é com essa mesma determinação que partimos para as diversas conversações que vamos ter com o Conselho e com a Comissão. Aliás, foi curioso porque hoje mesmo, durante o debate no plenário, o Comissário Stališče dizia que há coisas que nos afastam, mas há muitas coisas que nos aproximam no relatório, neste relatório intercalar do Parlamento. E, portanto, é com esse espírito que vamos para este processo. Aguardamos naturalmente que tão rapidamente quanto possível o Conselho possa ter também uma posição, seja conhecida a Necobox, para que possamos finalmente começar a trabalhar em conjunto para chegar naturalmente àquilo que seja uma melhor proposta para o próximo quadro financeiro.
Thank you very much for attending this